Welcome back, guys. If you have seen this channel before, you know I have been screaming from the high heavens that the rent apocalypse is upon us. And now it's starting to look like the numbers are actually showing that, as we have the first rent growth decline year over year since the early days of the pandemic in 2020. At the same time, we have vacancies skyrocketing and going back to pre-pandemic levels, while they are building the most apartments that they have built in the country in the last 50 years. So today we're going to take a look at some of that data and why I think that this trend is just getting started. I think it's just going to be bad news for landlords and bad news for multifamily investors pretty much from here on out. They've pushed most of their customers, renters, to the breaking point with the things they've done over the past 2 years, the massive rent increases, the ridiculous requirements. I mean, deposits, 3 times the monthly rent, first last security, 2 months security deposit. They've just really shoved everybody into a corner where a lot of renters have either left their area or just opted to pay the high mortgage rates and pay the high prices and buy a house and give themselves equity, though that is questionable with the way the market's moving, as opposed to their landlord. Now, before we get into it, most of this data is going to be coming from apartmentlist.com. I will have a link to them below in the description. I highly, highly encourage anybody who's interested in any of the rental data to go check them out. They've got some awesome stuff, and I appreciate them allowing me to bring it to you today. Additionally, if you find any of this content valuable, I would really appreciate if you guys could hit the subscribe button, give me a like, maybe share this with your friends, and please, if you could, comment below and let me know what you think and what you're seeing in your areas. The evidence and the anecdotal evidence that you guys provide in my comment sections are so valuable, and it's stuff that I just don't see and I don't know is going on in other parts of the country. So I really appreciate everybody who checks in. And now let's get right into it. So as stated, according to the Apartment List August 2023 National Rent Report, national rent growth is finally negative year over year. So as you can see here, the rent decline is now finally reflected. 2021, 2022, that went up to 18% rent growth. It is now down to negative 0.7. Now, 0.7% does not sound like a lot when you had annual rent growth at 18% year over year previously. And in some areas, it got as high as 40% year over year. So if your rent went up 40%, you're probably not too excited about hearing that it's down 0.7 nationally, but that is nationally. There are other areas where there are a lot larger drops than that, which we will take a look at here. And again, this is just the beginning of this phase. I think it's just got further to go from here, and I will show you why. And it is still down year over year, even though we've had consecutive months of month over month growth. So July is generally peak moving season. We typically measure some of the fastest rent growth each calendar year, they mention here. In pre-pandemic years, July rent growth was about 0.6%, but in July of 2023, it was only 0.3%. That's a 50% decrease from what historically it should have been. And even though it's grown slightly month over month for pretty much the past 6 or 7 months, it's still down even with those gains year over year nationally. So here we have the annual change in median rent from 2018 to the present. You can see that year to date, 2023 is only up 2.6%. So even with that growth, it's still down from last year. I mean, 2021 insanity, up 17%. But 2018 was up 3.5%, 2022 up 3.5%, 2020 actually down 1.4%. So you can kind of see we're returning to a baseline here, but it's actually it's growing slower than it was even in pre-pandemic years. And I think that with the amount of inventory that's about to be dumped on the market, this is only going to get worse. As I mentioned previously, there are more apartments under construction today than any time in the past 50 years. 970,000 of them to be exact. And the last time that happened was in the early 70s. As you guys know, if you've seen some other things on my channel, they are building these things everywhere, especially here in Florida. I can't go 4 or 5 miles without hitting 2 or 3 apartment complexes. And last month, 2 months ago, when I did my rental apocalypse video, there was about 2,000 apartments being ready to come online. It's so far surpassed that now. I cannot believe it. We have 2 more projects going up with 300 apartments apiece since I made that video. And I just found out yesterday they are planning on turning in one of our shopping centers into 791 apartments. with a hotel. And we got a hotel being finished on the harbor. It's just insanity. When all of these hit and all of these people start competing with each other, which they're already doing now, they are getting very desperate and trying to do free month's rent before the construction's done. They'll give you 4% cash back on your rent. I've never even heard of that. I don't even know what to just lower the rent 4%. Like, you're giving me a free month and the rent is lower 4% every month. Let's just make that deal. Why do we need all these fancy things in there? Or is it so you can show investors that what you told them on the pro forma and their estimates might actually be close to what you said they'd get 2 years ago? That's another big thing of this. Most of these projects, when they sought out investment, was based on 2021, maybe 2022 rent growth, which, as you guys saw, was astronomical. Well, now these buildings are being done and they're going to have to try to back up these numbers. And I always get met with, oh, well, all these apartments are being built in Florida because there's record influxes. So many people are moving here every day. Well, tell that to Miami, because Miami just saw its first population drop in decades. And they're saying surging housing costs in Miami and a fickle labor market are sending residents packing. It's the price of everything. It's the price. So Miami-Dade lost 80,000 people between 2020 and 2022. And that's all anyone tells me is everyone's moving to Florida. Everyone's coming here. No, they're not. And a lot of people are leaving too. And yes, people were flocking here during the pandemic. We were the only state open. That's, even all these Airbnb investors are like, oh, everyone wants vacation in Florida. No, they don't anymore. No, they don't. There's literally the entire world they can go check out now. They don't only have to go to Florida. So it's not, the demand's not there. Plus, if you're coming here to retire or buy a house, you're faced with astronomical housing prices, ridiculous interest rates. You better be buying cash. And then you got to see if you can even insure the place, which could run you $3,000. If you're near the water, could run you $18,000. So people are pulling away from Florida as a prime spot to buy right now. Our market is cooling rapidly. That you can see that in the data, and I think it's going to continue to do so. I mean, month over month, our prices may be up slightly here in Charlotte County, but year over year they're down 10%. So, when people say, oh, everyone's coming to Florida, they're really not. And a lot of people are leaving. We do a lot of listings and we're selling a lot of houses for people who can no longer afford to live here because the cost of everything just put them out of their house on their fixed income. So people are not coming here to buy the way they used to. That's for sure. Our inventory in Charlotte County is up to 5.1 months of supply, which is insane. 6 is a balanced market. Anything over we're almost in a buyer's market. I'd argue we are in a buyer's market because the demand, even if 5.1 months of inventory just isn't there, people aren't going to pay and deal with this stuff. So if people are not moving here to purchase, these multi-family apartments are out of their mind if they think that people are going to come across the country and rent here. Maybe for a year you'll rent while you're looking for a house or trying to get a deal right now. But you can't even take a job here, which is going to pay you, 40 to 60 grand, and then rent an apartment at 2.2 that's going to be $2,300 a month. It's going to eat up all your income. People are not coming here the way they are saying they are. We definitely still have buyers coming to Florida. People are always going to come to Florida, but they are certainly not coming in the way that they were 2 years ago. And all of these apartments seem to be based on that demand. And it's not just Florida. Apartment vacancies have surpassed their pre-pandemic peaks nationally. So we take a look at the Apartment List National Vacancy Index here going back to 2019. It peaked at 7.2% vacancy in June of 2020. Landlords couldn't get anything rented. They were trying to do everything they could. Well, now it's at 7.3 in July of 2023, so it's over that. You have the huge contraction here from June of 2020 to October of 2021, going from 7.2% down to 4.1%, and now we are starting to see the expanse. We're going in the opposite direction. So we have a huge uptick in national vacancy and more apartments coming online at this time than ever in 50 years. What do you guys think is going to happen when all of these complexes open? What do you think that's going to do to rents when they dump a ton of supply on the market that nobody wants already? And that's not just me. Even according to Apartment List, the easing on the rents has shown no signs of slowing, and it's likely that the vacancy rate will continue to trend even further upward in the months ahead. New apartment construction is recovering from pandemic-related disruptions, and there is now more multifamily units under construction than any point since the 70s. That's another thing you have to understand. Some of these projects were delayed due to supply issues, various things during the pandemic. They are all going full steam ahead right now. And taking a look here, we have 67 of the 100 largest cities in the US have negative rent growth through July of 2023. And if you take a look at the dots, a lot of them were boomtown, pandemic towns where everybody rushed in and we're like, oh, we're going to have vacation rentals here. Everyone's going to want to be here all the time. It's not looking great. I mean, Texas and Florida, a lot of blue dots, up in Tennessee, the mountain area. Boise, Idaho, leading with a 6.9% decline. As I said, it's 0.7% in some areas, but in other parts of the country, it's much more severe than that. It's almost a 7% decline in rents year over year in Boise. Now, you compare that to 2022, all of these cities had positive rent growth in 2022. We'll take a look at the number of the nation's 100 largest cities with negative rent growth year over year, and you can see in 2020, there was 65 total cities with negative rent growth. Now we're at 67. So again, we're surpassing pandemic numbers in all the wrong ways here. Okay, and real quick, guys, this is a month-over-month map for the entire U.S., but it does show the yearly estimates. So, as you can see over here in Boise, they're down 6.9% for the year, as we mentioned. Los Angeles, California, down 3.1%. You get down here into Texas, San Antonio's down 1%. Austin is down 5% year over year for rent growth. So these are some of the bigger jumps that we mentioned. Oklahoma, Tulsa down only 0.5%. And then, of course, New York City is actually year over year. That's even down 0.1%. So that's kind of interesting when you can see it still had month over month rent growth. That's a pretty big metro area they're covering there. So let's see, Detroit down 4.9%. What's going on in Montana? Billings down 1.6%. Cool town if you've never been there. And just jumping down here to Florida, looks like Jacksonville is down 4% year over year. Tallahassee holding at 0.1% growth year over year. Let's see, Clearwater is negative 2.5, St. Petersburg negative 2.6, Tampa negative 2.8% growth for the year. Kissimmee, Orlando down negative 3.2%. Melbourne, negative 4.6%. Cape Coral down 5.9%. So that's one of the largest jumps in the nation because Boise was the record at 7%, and this is only 1% lower. Fort Myers actually up 0.8%, down month over month. But let's see if we can get Sarasota in here. Sarasota is down 1%. Bradenton down 5.2%. East Coast, Miami down 1.1%. Hollywood down 2.1%, Fort Lauderdale down 1.3%. So you guys can kind of see pretty much across Florida, rents are going down. Obviously, some places a lot faster, like Cape Coral, but overall, this is the picture's being painted here on what's to come. And again, guys, this is without all of this supply that's about to be dumped onto the market. As I mentioned before, I really value the comments that you guys leave. Anecdotally, things I'm hearing is that landlords are not increasing rent this year. When renewals come up, some are cutting breaks. So they see the writing on the wall. I mean, if they're paying attention to the supply that's about to hit, they want to keep tenants in place as long as they can. They're trying 18-month leases. If somebody offers you an 18-month lease, think about maybe why that might be that they're doing that. I'd say try to negotiate your rents if you can, depending on the areas you're in. But the supply is about to explode and the demand is going off a cliff. They've pushed everybody too far. Let me know in the comments what you guys think and where we go from here, and I'll see you next time.